HIVESTACK, you're the founder and CEO. Some of your clients include Cholula, Daimler, Discovery, Nordstrom Rack. Take us through what you guys do for these clients.
Sure, thanks for having me. So for digital marketers like the ones you've named, what we do is we understand how audiences move around throughout the day. So the way that you can use a double-click platform to target people online,
right, like Google.
That's right, we allow that level of targeting to happen in the real physical world. So we understand how audiences are moving around, we index different audience scores, and then all the screens, the digital out-of-home screens that are connected into HIVESTACK, we can serve ads to those screens based on when we see a high concentration. So for example, Nordstrom Rack that you mentioned, Nordstrom Rack uses HIVESTACK via Cross Media, their agency, to drive foot traffic on the day of the store opening. So Nordstrom Rack's opened up 13 new stores this year, and they use HIVESTACK to basically geofence their competitors, such as Marshalls and TJ Maxx, understand what audiences are going in there, and then target them on digital out-of-home as they move around throughout the day.
Well look, Andreas, I think it's pretty easy for people to understand how marketers do this online, in-home, like a double click or a Facebook can do this and sort of track where you go across the web using your browser. But how do you do that in the physical world? What are the data sources that you're tapping into?
So we have a lot of location partnerships. So there's companies that have software developer kits that embed themselves into different publishers.
Like a Foursquare?
Foursquare has an SDK, yes. There's companies like Cubic as well. There's many of these companies that are essentially monetizing anonymous GDPR compliant location data. And companies like us actually purchase that data to help us build an audience understanding of how people move around throughout the day.
You brought up GDPR, so I have to ask about privacy. GDPR, of course, the new law going into effect in Europe earlier this year. How do you balance privacy with the data collection that you get?
So all of the location data sources that we tap into to build an understanding of how audiences are moving around, we ensure we only partner with GDPR compliant location partners. We have a close look at their privacy policies. We make sure that there's what's called a triple opt-in from a consumer perspective. And it's all based on IDFA or Android IDs, which are resettable and therefore not PI.
Does it create somewhat of an inaccurate representation if it's triple opt-in, if the person is knowing that they're going to be giving you their own data?
Well, I think
it's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to provide that data.
It is, but I still think we see a statistically relevant sample from the devices that do allow triple opt-in.
Okay, so what kind of devices are those?
Those are the iOS devices that are connected, that use apps that monetize their inventory. Several 100,000 apps are using real-time bidding via an SSP to monetize ad requests via an ad exchange, and this bid request that goes out includes the lat long of the device ID and so forth. And that's one way of getting location data. The other way is having that persistent level SDK data.
Okay, I get the data collection part, how it happens out of home. Then how is that data then used to target people in different populations in the physical environment?
So we have an audience science team that ingests all of these data sources on S3 buckets. There's only 5 columns of data: lat long, device ID, and horizontal accuracy, and time. And millions and millions and millions of rows of data coming in. We use typical tools like Apache Spark, which allows us to geotemporally query this data and understand what are the device IDs that were observed at a car dealership. Are they now in front of a digital out-of-home screen? And for an attribution perspective, have they walked into a physical store?
You have something called Nirvana scores. What is the scoring process? What is a Nirvana score? And how do your customers use it?
So that is a scoring mechanism that we assign. They're affinity scores that tell us whether a screen is indexing in near real time, high or low score against a specific audience. These scores are fed into our digital out-of-home ad server, and an algorithm decides whether we want to activate a screen or not based on those scores.
Okay, after starting this company, what has surprised you about consumer behavior? What have you learned about consumers, the way they interact in the physical environment, how they buy, what they shop for, that you just were shocked about?
So one of the things that really surprised us was there was a data analysis we were doing where Nordstrom Rack was opening up a new store, and we wanted to analyze, here in New York, where do Macy's shoppers live? And we looked at the top 10 zip codes of where Macy's shoppers live, and surprisingly, and this is the Macy's store here in New York, the top 10 zip codes included no zip codes from New Jersey, which is right across the water. We're like, how is that possible? But as we dug deeper, we realized New Jersey has no sales tax, state tax, and they have awesome malls. So the data sort of told us something that we couldn't really explain, and then after some analysis, it was surprising to learn that.
Earlier today I spoke with Matt Schuster from Vistar Media, a competitor of yours. How do you work with partners to communicate the differences between your companies and compete with the competitors that are out there?
So Vistar's a great company. I think they've really been one of the pioneers in our space when it comes to programmatic out of home, and commend all the work that they've done, and Matt's a good guy. I think that we compete, and at the same time, I think there's going to be some level of ultimate cooperation as too. So we're a full stack platform, which means we operate a supply-side platform, an exchange, an ad server, and a channel DSP. And Vistar is similar too in their full stack. And I think what we're going to see is eventually there's going to be some publishers or media owners that are going to want to choose one supply side, one portion of our platform as an SSP. They may want us to connect to omni-channel DSPs. So ultimately what I think may happen is some of us may have to temporarily sort of disconnect the supply side or the demand side and work with each other to enable the cash to flow from advertisers to publishers in a programmatic way.
Earlier this year we saw the rise of GDPR, and in the last couple of years we've seen so-called techlash happen in Silicon Valley, where consumers are upset with the way that companies like Facebook and Google have used data across different platforms. Do you anticipate any regulatory hurdles over the next few years with the type of data that you collect that could change the way you do business?
Absolutely, I do. In fact, in Germany, we operate the largest digital at-home private marketplace in Germany, and there's a company there that's very, very delicate making sure that they're GDPR compliant, and they've had to make some changes to make sure that they're compliant. We're already seeing it with the way that we handle data here in the US, and there's going to be some changes to the way that we run our ad serving and our measurement to make sure that we are careful about people's privacy.
Andreas, Soupliotis, thanks so much for joining us on Cheddar today.
Thank you.
Guys, going to send it back to you at the New York Stock Exchange.